here are the types of research designs that I told you. I'll be discussing each of them. By next week, we'll be discussing experimental research. So experimental research is the umbrella. And there are three types of experimental research: the true, quasi, and single subject. And we also actually have pre-experimental design. But I I don't encourage you to do experimental research considering pre-experimental design because of its disadvantages. And then under research designs, there are four: quantitative, qualitative, analytical study, and of course the mixed method. So there are also types of mixed method, but as you can see, hindi na yan kasya sa slide. But I have another presentation for mixed method. Now for quantitative, there are two types or two kinds of quantitative research. We have the non-experimental and experimental. If you cannot manipulate the variables, then you have to do non-experimental research. No? And there are four kinds also of non-experimental research. We have the descriptive, comparative, correlational, and causal comparative. For experimental research, we have actually four: no? Pre-experimental, true, quasi, and single subject. But I would like to focus the discussion to the three: no? True, quasi, single subject. But I will be discussing as well pre-experimental research design in order for you to know the disadvantages of using it. But I'm discouraging you to use. And for qualitative research, we have case study, phenomenology. I'm sorry for the misspelled word, a jumbled word actually, jumbled letters na phenomenology. Wala dapat yung A, no? Phenomenology, ethnography, and grounded theory. Then analytical study, we have concept analysis and historical analysis. Hopefully, we would be able to discuss everything, but based on practice until until qualitative research. But for educational research, we usually used qualitative and quantitative research and or mixed method. Uh, Compared it with action research, it's different. As I mentioned a while ago, it's just self-reflective. You will just solve immediate problem, you know, to address an immediate problem and not necessarily to advance the field of knowledge, just like the applied research. Kasi applied research will advance your knowledge to the field, your field of specialization. But you know, in practice, I do not know how they are doing it. I often hear saying na, please, let's do an action research, no? Pero applied siya. Parang they are not aware that they are actually talking about two different kinds of research, no? Applied research and action research. Then to facilitate sound teaching practices, in order for you to solve the problem, then immediately um, employing it in order for the students to master the lesson or the competencies. So research process, these are the things that should be considered, but we have already started. No? Imagine you were able to submit your titles. First tip, no? First tip na kasi you are done with this eh. Start reading. No? I approve your titles, you choose one, and then start reading related literature about your chosen title. Then start drafting your introduction. So selection of a general problem, you are done because you have submitted. Then review the literature of the problem. Are there literatures related to your problem or to your title? Then select the specific research problem and or questions that you would like to answer. Then collect the data. After collecting the data, you will now analyze and present or display the data using graph if needed. And then don't forget to interpret the findings and state the conclusions or generalization regarding the problem. So we'll discuss each of them one after another. So, but the research process that should be considered since you are still starting are the following. There are six. So we've started identifying the problem. Do not be confused with the problems and our questions. So later we'll discuss that. So tip number one, read. Kasi you were able to identify already your problem. Identify the problem to be addressed and the possible intervention if you have. For action research, you have to identify the immediate problem. So possible research problem areas in education. These are just examples, but you can choose your own. There are so many areas, particularly in education. So first, uh, related to the development of the individual, our students, particularly to the curriculum, the most essential learning competencies that we are using, the K to 12 curriculum, which is better, is spiral curriculum or the K to 12 curriculum and so on. Then research on social and economic conditions of education, especially in this time of the pandemic. How about I'm sorry, about values education? What's the importance of values education, especially in this time of the pandemic? Last night I was able to present our paper, no, lived experiences of values education teachers in an online distance learning. It's very important in order for you to motivate your students. You may share relatable experiences or applications. What are the values that should be developed, especially in this time of the pandemic, in considering the system that we have, diba? So it's very difficult. The situation of our students, especially in the lower level, and very, very difficult. They are alone. So what should we do? What values should be developed among them? Then research on teaching, no? Considering also the curriculum triad, the assessment, the instruction, and the curriculum itself. So it could be part of areas now in education where you can do your research or you would be able to identify a problem. Then research on educational administration, leadership and management. Research on individual differences among the students that you have. Could be research also about the practices of teachers. It could also be the experiences of the teachers in teaching. Research and development of a technology and education and historical research in education. So these are the 8 problem areas in education where you can have your problem. So what is a research problem, by the way? Of course, first and foremost, it's a problem that you would like to research on. It should be based on your field of specialization. What you know, you are capable. Then anything that the researcher finds unsatisfactory, difficult, or some sort to maybe unsatisfactory in your system, in your practices, and it's a state of affairs that needs to be changed for you because it's not working. So what would be the better option? What would be the better practice in order for it to work? So that's a research problem. So these are some of the factors that you need to consider when you select research. It should be in your field of interest, considering your field of specialization. Availability of funds, of course. Baka naman we don't have the resources, but I believe you have the resources. Don't tell us na you don't have your resources. Of course you have. Then investigators' ability, your ability, your training. For example, Wala na si dog, the barking dog. For example, you would like to do research about the effectiveness of differentiated learning. As a teacher, you should know how to do differentiated learning. What are the things that should be considered when you do differentiated learning? Because if you do not know, then you can't do research about it. You have to be capable into a particular field that you would like to do in order for you to know more things about that particular practice, about that particular intervention that you would like to do. Okay, so let's have a 5 minute break. 36 minutes na pala. 5 minute break. Okay, hopefully you can see now the presentation. Um, so again, no, these are the factors to consider when selecting a research problem. It should be based on your field of specialization, your field of interest as well, then the availability of funds. But of course, there are so many things now uh, that should be considered. But these are the three things now that I really would like you to focus on. Then your ability and training. Because remember, if you do not know what you are doing, then there are so many things that you wouldn't be able to do when doing your research. Tip number two, clarify the intervention to address the identified problem. No? So uh, that's the tip number two that I would like you to consider. First, read and then clarify the intervention to address. Does it really address the concern, your the phenomenon, or not? Then you read more things about it, about your intervention. Do not be confused, as I mentioned a while ago, with the research problem and research questions. No? Because the research questions, usually the research problem is written as a question. So they are just the same. The questions will now serve as the focus of your investigation or your research. So therefore, after identifying the topic, your title, you are now going to write the research questions. You read more things about your topic. Now after this, after the discussion, the remaining time will be used, no, for you to look at the my comments in the concept paper that you have submitted. If all are approved, then you choose one and then start working on it. After identifying one, you read and then write your research questions. Okay, let's see, no, which is the most appropriate methodology for questions in the given research. So number one, does client-centered ther- therapy produce more satisfaction in clients than traditional therapy? What do you think is the most appropriate methodology for this question? Answer is experimental. But remember, meaning to say you can do any types of experimental research in this particular topic. No? There are four, as I mentioned a while ago. We have the pre-experimental, quasi, and true experimental design and single subject. Next, does behavior modification reduce aggression in autistic children? But remember, when you're SPED, diba, we are not calling them anymore autistic children. Diba? They are students with special needs. So, what do you think is the most appropriate methodology? Answer is, charan, single subject experimental, because you are actually considering a particular student, no, the group of students or student. Next, are the descriptions of people in social studies discussions based biased? Are the descriptions of people in social studies discussions biased? Answer is grounded theory. Next, what is going on in an elementary school classroom during an average week? Answer is ethnographic research. You're going to observe. No, you have to go to the classroom and then observe them. How about this? Let's try. Do teachers behave differently towards students of different genders? So what do you think? Considering the types of research designs, what do you think is the most appropriate design or methodology for this particular question? Just a guess, just a guess. So use the message box and type in your guess. It's okay kahit magkamali, guys. Don't you worry about it. At the end of the day, I am not yet done discussing the research design. But if you watch the video clip I uploaded in my YT channel, particularly the titles, no? Kasi after reading the research title, you should be able to know immediately the most appropriate methodology that should be used. What do you think is the most appropriate methodology? Sige lang, any guess? Hindi masama, don't worry if you would not be able to get the correct answer. I just want you to participate and for me to know if you are still with me, no, listening. It's okay if you are ano yun, sitting or lying on the bed. It's okay. Basta you respond. Okay, let's see. The correct answer is causal comparative. Kasi nga, obviously, no, different behave. You will compare their behavior. How about this? The most appropriate, no? Because you can also do case study, no? But you will revise the question, no? Regarding that particular question. Then, how can we predict which students might have trouble learning certain kinds of subject matter? Okay. Predictive talaga yan. Pero, di ba, under predictive, as mentioned a while ago, you can do correlational or comparative. But that is predictive research. No? Under ng predictive research. That's correct. Ba, nakinig si Crystalina. Ang bilis niya eh. Naglagay agad ng predictive. Di ba? But in order for you to know the relationship, the significant relationship, then correlational siya. No? Spearman draw, Spearman rank, ganun. But predictive research yan. Next, how do parents feel about the school counseling program? Diba, survey, madali lang yan eh, survey siya. How can a principal improve faculty morale? Madali lang din to. Siyempre, interview mo muna sila, then you will analyze the data that you've gathered, and that's it. So what are common to the questions being asked? We can collect data of some sort, no, empirical data, to answer them. And that's what makes them researchable. Now, when you are constructing your questions based on your research design and of course your title, think of this. If you can gather empirical data, considering the questions that you have included in your research, then